All right, there you go.
I mean, I wish we could go faster.
You know me. Jeez, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll just need the first part.
Sounds good. Alrighty.
Okay, so, how are you?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So you could just introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Lucas. I am adjunct professor here of theology and the director of campus ministry.
Okay. So on today's interview, we'll be talking about the influence of religion on what is seen right and wrong. So the first question I have is, what would you define the concept of piety and being pious?
Sure. Yeah. Being pious, I would say, is a religious term, right, for being holy. And to be holy is not, something that makes you better than other people. It's not something that makes you somehow loved more by God in the Christian sense. But being pious is, if you are a Christian, right, and that's my perspective as a Catholic Christian person, to be pious is to devote yourself to God by means of belief, prayer, your outward actions, right? So being kind and being charitable to other people, being humble in your heart towards other people, by loving people. I would say that piety is both an internal and an external thing. So what you do internally, so how I think about you or your professor or other people on campus, must be pious, as well as the way that I exteriorly express my inward thoughts. Does that make sense? Okay.
So we was talking about before this, the Euthyphro Dilemma, and what makes something morally right or wrong. So to what extent do you believe our religious beliefs have an impact on what we believe is morally right?
So if I'm correct, I did a little investigation in preparation for these interviews, and Euthyphro's dilemma is twofold, correct? Right. So the first option for him was that because God says it's holy, good, because God says it's good, a thing is good or bad. But then the other option is goodness preceded God, and God does what he does because it's already good. Yeah. Correct? Okay, so my understanding, my belief is the first, that God deems what is good or not good. And my reasoning for that is that in the Catholic Christian tradition, we believe that God is the creator of all things, right? You've heard of God made everything in 7 days, 6 days, rest on the seventh, all that kind of stuff. And because God creates, he also created what is good and not good. Well, he didn't create what's not good. He only creates good. If the second one were to be true, if goodness were to precede God, that would mean that there was another creator, another God, you could say, other than him, and one that's better than him or bigger than him, because he is then doing what another God has created. Does that make sense? Right? Because if something if I say to you that God is the creator of all things, is all-knowing, is all-powerful, is all good, right? He must then therefore create goodness. But if like the second argument says, if God does what is good because it's already good, then that would mean that he is not all-powerful, all-knowing, because something else is telling him what to do, right? For example, a parent and a child, right? As it ought to be. I guess it's not a perfect example, but if a parent tells a child what to do, it ought to be because it's good, right? It's good for that child. A child can't tell the parent what to do, because, at least not at a younger age, because they don't know what is right and wrong. Meanwhile, a good parent does know what is right and wrong. So the creator must be the creator and the executor of what is right and wrong. I don't know if it's a great example, but yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, I understand. So, do you believe that what is deemed right and wrong can change over time, or does it stay constant?
I would say that there are different levels to what is right and wrong. I would say that there are very clear things that are right and wrong, right? So we have different teachings in the church and revelation from God where something is possibly an intrinsic evil or an intrinsic good. But within those intrinsic things, there is gray area that comes down to maybe intention. For example, killing. Let's use killing, right? For someone to murder someone, right? That's an intrinsic evil thing. Like, thou shalt not kill, right? Right there in the Bible. Can't kill anybody. Can we both agree that killing is wrong, right? Murder is wrong. Now, let's say someone were to break into one of our individual homes or dorms later, and threatened you with let's not use you or me as an example. Let's say there's an example of someone breaking into someone's house and threatening to kill them.
Okay.
Right? And that person uses self-defense to kill that person. Right? Both, to murder is to kill, and self-defense is, sometimes lethal and kills someone, right? But self-defense is not intrinsically evil because it is a self-defense of someone, right? So while killing is an evil thing, the intention at which someone has of killing may change whether it's right or wrong. The church teaches that self-defense, of course, in certain situations, is permissible, right? So it is, the church says that so long as, you are defending yourself from someone that's trying to kill you, it is permissible to use, if needed, a lethal blow to defend yourself, right? I have a wife. If someone comes to my house, and I need to, hurt the person that's trying to hurt me, I'm going to do it because it's my wife, and I've said yes to protecting her at all costs. Now, am I liable, right, in a spiritual sense, right, of the same punishment as someone who outrightly murders someone? No. Did I, in self-defense, it could possibly be killing, but because it is, the intention is not necessarily to kill, but to protect, the specific circumstance might change depending on what's going on. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just blabbering.
So, religion and government policies, they both deem, what is right, per se. Do you think, they could coexist? Or does one precede another?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, in our, I have the experience, you have the experience of living in an American culture with, American government. And...
A little bit. I'm from the Bahamas.
Okay, right. Yeah. But you live here, so maybe you go to school here, so you might have a little bit. But for my sake, so I see in my day-to-day that, religion and government can coexist, for sure. Your question on what precedes what is very interesting, and that's a broad. I mean, that's a really broad question, but it's a good question. I would say that the church's teaching on government and authority is that you ought to listen to legitimate authority, right? So if you're pulled over because you're speeding, it's the law of the land that you're not allowed to speed in America, right? And so if you get pulled over for speeding, that's lawful. You need to comply with that police officer. America, United States of America, and other countries have laws that permit or do not permit certain actions, and the church would say, so long as it is a legitimate authority, you need to listen to those rules because that is the country and the law of the country that you live in. The church would say, though, that if legitimate authority creates a law that goes against what is right in the church's eyes, that you do not listen to that law. It is very rare. I don't think I've ever experienced it in America, but in some countries where I don't know any specific examples, but let's say there is a country that says that you must kill someone every day. In this clearly made up country, right? If I lived in that country, I would not listen to that law because it is unlawful in a religious in a Christian religious sense for me to kill someone. I can't do that. Right? I can't murder someone. No, nor do I desire to. And so if I lived in that country, I would not obey that law, right? So the church says that so long as the laws that are in a certain country are, in good moral standing, then yes, you must listen to those laws. But in that sense, I would say that religion comes first. But the Christian Catholic tradition does not put it. It does not. It says to listen to the law of the country that you are in. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, great.
And then the last question I have is, what do you think is the impact of social media on morality?
What do you think?
I believe that social media gives us. I feel like it gives us I would like to see other opinions.
Sure.
So it really influences what we believe.
Sure. Absolutely.
More than without it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the question one more time?
What do you think is the impact of social media on morality?
The impact on morality. Well, it doesn't change morality. Social media doesn't. It might. Social media surely tells us, what it thinks right and wrong is.
Yeah, it does.
But it doesn't mean that it changes what right and wrong is. What is good is already given to us by God, right? Out of love for us, God revealed what is good, what is evil, and that He is all good. Social media makes it difficult a lot of the times to love God and to revere Him, because frankly, it's addictive, and it's it feeds us a lot of information, and I feel like social media today is really influenced by big corporations and certain individuals, different but whatever either in America we have a two-party system, right? And so in America, whether you're right or left, Republican, Democrat, both parties are really trying to use social media to their advantage, right? And so when we use social media, I think it's really important that we have a clear mind of what we're using it for, because whatever app you're using, whatever kind of phone you're using, the people that own those things are trying to influence us, and they're trying to influence you and me to do something that they desire. And so when we use social media, I think it's really important that we don't allow it to consume us, and we don't allow it to influence us to a greater degree than we ought to allow it to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Because we live in a culture that all it wants to do is influence us, and I don't think a majority of the things that are trying to influence us ought to have that right, because they're not doing it for our good.
Yeah.
They're doing it for their own.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so I think that some things can be good with social media, like, see, with, because, I mean, the initial goal of social media was to be social with people, right?
And connect, yeah.
And connect, exactly. But at this point in 2022, almost 2023, I don't think that's the goal anymore. I think the goal of social media for the people who own social media is to influence. But I don't think it's always in the best intention. And so when you and I use social media, we need to be aware of that. But they do a really good job of not allowing that to be seen in the light, which allows social media to still seem innocent. Which, I mean, for a lot of it is, but a lot of it's not. So that's a long-winded answer of me saying social media is neither good nor bad. It's pretty indifferent, but it's up to us to use it in the proper way. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
For your time.
My pleasure.
Okay. Do you play the piano?
I do play the piano. Yeah.
Me too.
Do you?